Yeah, so licensing was actually one of the reasons why, when we first started out, nobody else was doing this. Because the situation is, to be honest, very complex. There's a lot of organizations that you need to speak to in order to get licenses. It's complicated, it takes a lot of time. In our case, it took nearly a year to get the licenses that we needed in place. And that's something that I think we'd like to see improved. In fact, we've contributed to a lot of government research, both on a UK level and on an EU level, about ways that we could help modernize the copyright framework, frankly. And so it was challenging and that was tough, but the fact that we've gone to those degrees to secure the licenses has in the end sort of proved very useful for us in terms of doing the brand deals. So the business now is in quite a good place. We're just recently launched our iPhone app last week, our new iPhone app, I should say, which was featured by Apple in their new noteworthy section. So we're pretty chuffed about that. That's really good. And I think, you know, judging from all the reactions we've had, the feedback's been super positive. Everybody's loving it. And this year, sort of for us, has been all about, you know, looking at the mobile space, because it's obviously exploding. Everybody's talking about mobile, and we've already seen that our listener numbers in terms of mobile have grown to about 25% of our total listening. So it's clearly taking off quite big for us. So that's mobile, and in terms of audience, we're now reaching about 10 million people across all our platforms: mobile, website, widgets, social networks, things like that. And so we've got a significant user base that we're hoping to grow more in the future. And for us, sort of the next 12 to 18 months is all about growing the content base and also working more in America, actually. We're hoping to open up a US office later this year. I think Tech City, you know, is a great brand name that sort of goes with this area that's always had this appeal to young people. Ever since the sort of 80s or 90s, you know, you had the young British artists move in, the YBAs, back when the White Cube Gallery first opened up. I think that was around the early 90s. And ever since then, you know, the fact that there's been relatively cheap rent, cheap warehouses, I mean, it's all relative, we're still in London, but, you know, the appeal of cheap rent, East London, big spaces has been really attractive for not only artists but web entrepreneurs, people working in the music space, in the art spaces. And so for us, it's really a question of having this ecosystem, this sort of community in the area that is more than just tech entrepreneurs, you know? I mean, that's what the focus has been on a lot recently, and what I think the government is focused on, but the truth is there's a lot more than that to this area. There's a big cultural history, and so that's why you can go down Brick Lane and you can go to these really nice coffee shops, you can go hang out, there's lots of clubs that you can go into in the evening, there's a lot of street art everywhere, and so I'm a big fan, frankly, and I think it's great that the area's seen a lot of the spotlight recently. So, I mean, generally the biggest piece of advice that I've learned is really get your product out there as early as possible so that you can get the feedback as early as possible. I think a lot of times as founders, people tend to want to make it perfect. They want to have everything absolutely perfect, no bugs. And the reality is it's better to get things out there and get people using them and finding out what other features you never even thought of that people might be interested in, rather than holding it back and trying to make something perfect when in fact it does a lot of good to release it into the world, even if it's only a beta version, you know? If you are fundraising, it's really important to speak to the right people at the right time. So if you're in an idea stage, there's not really much point going to speak to a VC who's only going to invest, you know, £2 to £5 million. What you need to do is be looking at the incubators. Once you've been through an incubator or you've got some sort of minimum viable product, then that's to the point where you want to be speaking to angels, following on from angels, go and speak to the VCs. And I think that's something that, in hindsight, we didn't really recognize, and we were speaking to everybody, but we should have just started with incubators. You learn the hard way, I guess, sometimes.